I think this fits into something else that was on the docket today, and that was the Stephon Castle point guard situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple things. The first thing is I didn't realize he played point guard in high school, and that's just on me. I was ignorant of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that explains why he's, wanting to do this more. Two, I mean, and for those of you guys who don't know, he was a McDonald's All-American 5-star recruit, like at the point guard position. Two, as Lou explained in our episode last week, he went to UConn with no guarantees for
Mm-hmm.
playing time, position. You know what I mean? He just went to win back-to-back national championships, which he did. And he played whatever role was necessary and asked of him. So that's where this is a little interesting to me, Ethan, because there's some recruiting stuff going on. I mean, obviously, there's always recruiting stuff going on in college sports. Bear with me here. I swear this is going to have a connection. And one of the things that a lot of the recruiting people say is don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. Like, so if a kid's saying he's committed to a school, but he's taking visits to others, how committed is he? Right. Stephon Castle is saying he's not going to do pre-draft workouts and with teams that won't consider him a point guard. Sorry, I'm pulling this up exactly so we don't butcher this. Here we go. There are whispers of Stephon Castle and his camp potentially not being willing to do pre-draft workouts for teams with starting point guards already in place. Castle views himself as a point guard, and he was a 5-star recruit at the position before arriving at UConn. Potentially interested teams like the Hornets, Trailblazers, and Grizzlies could be impacted. Castle is viewed as a consensus top 10 pick in next month's draft. And there was also another thing that came out today, Ethan, that M-Easy mentioned in the comments earlier. And that is this. According to Kelly Eco, who is a reporter for The Athletic, he said that the Spurs are said to be big fans of Stephon Castle. Kelly Eco also reported that the Rockets may be potentially looking at Donovan Mitchell, and maybe potentially making a move for him as well. The only reason I bring that up is just to kind of give some more legitimacy to him working for The Athletic as a reporter. And also just because I saw that when I went to his profile, because I was like, okay, if this guy's saying this, let me see how legit he is. And I was like, okay, he works for The Athletic. He's an NBA writer for them. Right. So, that doesn't mean he's going to be right about everything, but it's not like this is just some Twitter account saying this either.
Right. All right.
So with that being said, Ethan, there is some smoke for the Spurs with Stephon Castle. But what I was trying to connect with the college recruiting thing is that he's saying that he doesn't want to do pre-draft workouts with teams that don't consider him, that already have a point guard. But his actions last season were going to UConn and just doing playing whatever role possible to win. You know what I'm saying? So right. I'm not saying that he doesn't want to be a point guard in the NBA. Obviously he does. But I find it hard to believe that with what he did last year, that if he were to get drafted by somebody who told him, hey, we want you to play the 2 or the 3, that he's just gonna be like, nope, I'm going full Eli Manning. I'm not, I'm not getting drafted by you. I demand a trade now. Like, if he was that guy, he's not. And I know, yes, winning a championship was a big part of him going to UConn. But obviously that shows that winning is a big part of his goal. And it also shows that he's willing to do whatever it takes to win, right, on the team. With all of that being said, the Spurs need a point guard, which is actually why I think this whole scenario kind of makes Stephon Castle more intriguing. And there's a number of things that I kind of wanted to dive into with that. But what are your thoughts on kind of, him saying that he only wants to play point guard and how that might play out?
He might. I mean, it could be a couple things. One, it could be just his team, his agent saying that because they don't want him to go 5, 6, or 7. Let's say the Spurs don't take him at 4. Those next 3 teams don't necessarily need a point guard, so maybe they're thinking, oh, but we can still take Castle and just play him at small forward. It's like, no, we don't want to go there because you're a point guard. It might not even be him. I think probably more often than not, these discussions are being I mean, I'm sure he's involved, but I don't necessarily see Stephon Castle coming out and saying, I refuse to play for a team that already has a starting point guard. Like you said, he is not necessarily, his actions have not reflected that. Maybe he just wants to play for San Antonio, or maybe it's just like point guards get paid more. Maybe it's simple as that. Like maybe like he just wants to be classified as a point guard, kind of like in the NFL when guys are trying to be classified as receivers that are actually tight ends. I think that was Jimmy Graham because
Mhm.
receivers get paid more than tight ends get paid. Um, yeah, and like the comments are saying, he didn't necessarily have an opportunity at UConn because of their depth at point guard and their style of play to showcase his ability as a point guard. Is kind of point guard by committee at times, and obviously they had a lot of guys that had that skill set. So other things shine for him, and he's 6'5", and there were smaller players on that team, I'm pretty sure. So just by matchup wise, he's going to be at the wing more often than not at UConn. So if for some reason teams are slotting him at the wing position more, maybe his team just wanted to nip that in the bud and say, look, this guy's a point guard. He just didn't have the opportunity at UConn to be a ball dominant, high usage rate guy.
Yeah. I mean, I think you summed it up pretty solidly there, Ethan. And I was texting with some friends before the episode started, and one of them just made a point like, if Castle ends up going to another school, he probably puts up like
Right.
way better stats too, because it's not just that he's playing on UConn, who's a talent stacked team, but we've talked about this before, I believe, in the first prospect breakdown we did on Stephon. UConn has one of the most complex offenses in all of college basketball. And that's why they've won the national championship 2 years in a row. And the other thing that I even brought up in the prospect breakdown, and once again, this is when I was ignorant of his high school his high school history, I guess you could say a little bit, was, you did see him orchestrating sets a lot of times, in the UConn tape. And when I was watching that, I was like, maybe there is a little part of him that could be a point guard. But in my head, I'm thinking like, oh, that would be like a project, not to the. And this is when I'm ignorant of him playing point guard in high school. But when I first said that, I was thinking like, oh, this will be not Sohan level, because he has a better handle. Like he already proved that he could, work through ball pressure and like dribble around guys. It wouldn't be to that extent, but I kind of felt like, okay, this would be like a molding project if we're going to do that. So I wasn't even really considering that too much. I was thinking about him more at the three because we already have Devin Vassell. But now that all of this is coming out, it's definitely making me think about a lot of things, Ethan, because to be honest, and I had this thought earlier today, just tell me what your thoughts are on this. Offensively, he kind of does what Trey Jones does right now, but like has more of a bag inside the paint. You know what I mean? And there's a little bit of the shooting questions, but we also saw at the combine him win the 3-point shooting star drill. UConn's offense, maybe if he's in a more free flowing system, he gets more looks, he has more volume, the numbers are better. But I believe that was a little bit of a struggle in high school for him as well too. But I think also what we saw at the combine shows that it's not like, his jumper is just complete crap either.
Right.
Like Lou said, it's going to need some work. It's not perfect, but also I think he could, I think it's, if Jeremy Sohan can get to 33% at 3-point shooting this season, like Stephon Castle, I think has the potential to maybe even do better than that in his career. But even in a sense where that doesn't work out, that's already the case with Trey. And what's Trey's biggest deficiency at point guard, Ethan?
Defense. Yeah.
I don't really need to say any more about that, because Stephon would be, not only would he be a different physical specimen, but he would be a different skill specimen on defense. Now, obviously there's going to be rookie growing pains, but I just think about, we're going to have to deal with Luka. We're going to have to deal with Shea Gilgeous. We're going to have to deal with Jalen Green. As much
Anthony
as,
Edwards.
Jalen Green isn't as big as those guys, right? Anthony Edwards. Zion takes the floor up a bunch. I was just thinking of teams in our division.
Right.
And I think in the Zion matchup, that would probably be Sohan regardless.
Mhm.
But with Shea and Luka, those are dudes who like literally play point guard. Having Stephon Castle on those guys would be a massive upgrade over Trey Jones.
Right. Right. I like to finish off with Castle's our perspective on Castle. I like what Lou said last time we had him on. Um, with Stephon Castle, you have to ask yourself, what doesn't he do? Not what does he do, because that list is much, much smaller. And if you say, what doesn't he do well right now? The only thing you can really say is consistent 3-point shooting at UConn. But like you said, we still have to be aware of the fact that he won that drill at the combine. His
Right.
jump shot is not broken; it is smooth, and shooting is a skill that everybody can improve on. We've seen it done before. And even after Chip England left, I see you in the comments, MEZ, even after Chip England left, we have had players develop and become better 3-point shooters. They're not necessarily 45% right now, but we saw Jeremy Sohan improve this year. We saw Trey Jones improve this year. I mean, I can go on and on. Devin Vassell improved tremendously as well. I don't remember what he shot as a rookie, but it did not translate
Victor
immediately.
got better throughout the year as well.
Keldon Johnson, like we have seen guys develop even without Chip England on the staff. So I'm not too worried about that for him.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not trying to diminish like Chip England's exit
No,
either,
hey,
because
no,
look at how Oklahoma City's shooting.
for
But at
sure.
the same time, I do get what you're saying there. Like we have seen, like what was I don't remember what Jeremy Sohan's 3-point percentage was last season, but it was in the 20s, and
Yes,
now it's in the 30s. So
that's an improvement.
and especially Trey Jones at the end of the season. Now we'd like to see that consistently throughout the year, but definitely some solid signs there. Um, but Ethan, is that any other final thoughts on Stephon Castle at point guard and that whole conversation?
No, sir. I think it works.
And it's definitely making me consider him at 4 more. I will say that I love Rob Dillingham, um, but I think that there's a lot of I mean, like I think there's some stuff that Stephon Castle could do in the pick and roll with Wemby that would still, unlock some things for us offensively. Obviously, he's not going to be able to have this, he's not going to have the same step backs and shooting ability out of the pick and roll that Rob Dillingham does.
Mhm.
But nonetheless, he would attract attention with the ball in his hand, which would, leave a guy like Devin Vassell open. That also then ties into Jeremy Sohan and, who else we have on the floor at that point, whoever we draft at 8. I assume would probably be a 3 to replace Champagny. Um, but there's a lot of intriguing. I don't think it's just like if you pick Castle, there's not like some offensive potential there still is what I'm trying to get at.
I would agree with that. Yes, sir.